So I'm doom scrolling social media the other day, and I see a statement that got me in my feels a little bit, got my feelers hurt. The submachine gun is dead. Now, blasphemy against my beloved MP5 and slander against my World War winning Machine, the M1 Thompson right here, I had an emotional reaction to that statement. I was like, okay, bro, let's talk about this. How could a super compact, super high rate of fire bullet hose machine pistol ever be irrelevant? I mean, it's one of the greatest small arm tech advancements of, well, all time. How are you, Mr. Stranger Sir, about to tell me that is irrelevant in a dead platform? And no sooner after that came out of my mouth, that post-pecan walnut clarity hit me like a hot bag of nickels, and the guilt and consequences of my own actions overwhelmed me. I saw the light. You know, maybe the submachine gun did die. Maybe it died decades ago. And not only is it irrelevant, I don't think it's coming back. Janies and Letterman. Welcome back to at least the 69th greatest gun tube channel this side of the Mississippi. Like a construction vest wearing Chick-fil-A drive-thru worker, it's a pleasure to be in your presence while you steal company time. Thank them for their service. As always, I cannot thank you guys enough for the support here, the subscribers, the views, the likes, shares, commenting, for the YouTube algorithm gods. You have no idea how much that helps. This little community that you and I have created here, I just can't thank you enough. We're about 20,000 subscribers away from 1 million, all within about 2.5 years. Love you guys to death, man. So be sure to check out my Instagram. It's at 110SASActual. Big news is coming there soon once we hit 1 million, so definitely head over there and stay tuned. We also need to give a massive shout out to AIM Surplus, the biggest supporter of the channel, and you guys here as well. Absolutely the goats of the 2A industry. Mom and pop shop kind of vibes, but with a nationwide online presence. Every single thing for your 2A needs. These folks are down to earth and just knowledgeable about the greatest hobby on planet Earth. So, mad thank you to those dudes wanting to support the homies that support the homies and support the homies. Thank you. Now, the MP5, the MP40, the MP7, the grease gun, the Thompson, the Sten, BNT subguns, Uzis, the Swedish K, the submachine gun. How did this happen? How did the submachine gun essentially completely disappear altogether from the battlefield in the last couple of decades? Well, I think to fully understand it, we have to go back to the beginning. In the 1860s, you have the Gatling gun. Bro, picture this and imagine this. You are out there with your Pilgrim-ass musket, all 5 feet of single shot, horribly inaccurate, round ball, 1 minute reloading time, and you and your boys pull up on this thing. Like, first of all, dog, what a time to be alive. You've got essentially what is an antiquated garbage rod at your shoulder. And these dudes over here are cranking out 45-70 at 400 rounds per minute between 6 barrels. Imagine the look on old boy's face when him and his hobies hop over a stone wall in Petersburg, peak Civil War, to be greeted by a wall of 45 caliber lead. Now, fast forward a couple decades, and we've got the Maxim. They took that idea and ran and made it into something even more diabolical. Another decade later, our second Lord, Saint, and Savior, John Moses Browning, whips up the potato digger, 1895. Another couple decades later, we have the Great War, the largest conflict to date that quite literally impacted the globe. So, at this time, machine guns were being used on a scale in battle basically never seen before. Tactics, they had changed. Platoon formations had changed. Just warfare, everything had changed forever. Entire battles were fought around the employment of these machine guns. But here's the thing. They were exclusively defensive weapons. Now, I am sure there's some stories of some mad lads and chads whipping around these 100-pound water-cooled massive hunks of steel and lead-dealing hate like it's a Glock 40 problem solver, but realistically, that's not the way that they were employed. Simply because, again, these guns without ammo were 100 pounds. And on top of that, the warfighters back then, no, they weren't on enough testosterone to kill a rutting bull moose like we see these hard hitters to do today. They were 5'5", 5'7", 120, 140 pounds. Old corn-fed 6'4", 255-pound Kevin from Ohio, that wasn't a thing. But that didn't stop the advancement of this technology. They said, give me that MG, but make it to where I can hop in a trench, I can sweep it with this little carbine-sized blaster, bingo, bango, bongo, The MP18 is born, a small, light, nimble bullet hose in 9mm that was geared 100% towards an offensive operation. And just like that, warfare had changed again. Now, the MP18 was a day late and a dollar short, as it caught pretty much the very, very tail end of World War I and wasn't fielded in a scale of really any meaningful impact. At that time, the gun couldn't win the war, but you better believe it changed war. This led to World War II, where submachine guns were being fielded on the largest scale ever in history, period. Every single country, Axis or ally, had at least one submachine gun at the front lines at all times. Americans had at least 3 different subguns see combat, over twice that if you count all the variants. Germans had the MP40 in those variants. British had the Sten. Japanese had the Type 100. Italians had the Beretta. Russians had the PPSH. Australians had the Owen gun. Every single country, Axis or ally, had some sort of submachine gun. But this war here is where everything changed for the submachine gun. So, you see, prior to World War II, essentially every machine gun was a recoil-operated 100 to a 50-pound machine, meaning, first, it uses the energy and recoil created by the cartridge going kablam to operate the action. Eject that spent case, shove a new one in there, blah, blah, blah. And that used to be exclusive to these heavy machine guns that weren't exactly mobile. Taking this tech and shoehorning it into a smaller package was brilliant. However, it was limited to pistol calibers, things like 9mm and 45. And let's be real, while that's more than sufficient for a handgun and CQB, it's basically limited to just that, CQB. Effective range of these subguns, they were kind of laughable in the 1920s and 1940s. Even more laughable was their accuracy. Cartridge technology simply was nowhere near the level of today. American doctrine called for 60 meters effective range with some of these M1 Thompson variants. Same for the Sten. The MP40 claimed 100 meters. This is basically a fraction of what the M1 Garand and M1 Carbine had provided at that time. And they did it in semi-auto, not a full auto bullet hose. The Americans, though, they were onto something very special with the M1 Garand, especially the M1 Carbine. Utilizing the gas that is produced by that kablam, we learned you can run an entire gun on that magic gas. Germans found that out, and they took that to the next level with the FG42 and the STG44. Bingo, bango, bongo, again, the assault rifle is born. Stay with me now. This invention, it led to the AK-47, the M14, the M16, the FAL, the G3, basically once again changing the entire world with one small arms development. This new battle rifle had effectively bridged the gap between these super heavy crew-served machine guns and the subgun. It was perfect. It was brilliant and effective. It took the subgun from the most widespread machine gun used to, well, the least used and fielded machine gun of all time. Guns like the M14 multiplied the Thompson's range by at least 6, weighed about the same, more accurate, and was capable of full auto. Dog, I mean, come on. But they weren't done cooking yet. The M16 comes along and bridges that gap between that battle rifle and subgun even better, which was lighter, less recoil, and far more stopping power than your typical subgun, especially when you're talking about ranges beyond that 50 to 100 meters. By the 1960s, the subgun was nearly obsolete, but then our beloved MP5 comes along and changes the perspective on subguns. It's compact, it's reliable, great rate of fire. And sensationally good looking. I mean, come on, look at this thing. I mean, to be honest, it's ran supreme as king of SMGs since really its inception, but only because the US military didn't care to improve upon it. You see, the US had basically zero interest in fielding another subgun beyond these super niche roles and objectives. In fact, we were kind of cooking up our own thing that effectively dealt the subgun its final blow. The M4 Car 15 platform, the beginning of the end of the subgun. The M4 Car 15 platform took the light battle rifle that was the M16 and turned it into basically a more effective, more versatile subgun that was lighter and just as accurate. These new M4s could be chopped down to as short as 10.3 inches. You could put an optic on it, add a PEC, add a suppressor, and you have a gun with more energy on target at CQB ranges and 10 times the precision at ranges beyond CQB, and could still effectively get hits at 300, 400, 500 meters in the right hands of an operator. all throughout the global war on terror, with the exception of a handful of elite units, Delta, DEVGRU, things like that, who quickly phased out those subguns that they brought in, the MP7. Where are they at today? Where are they? Well, effectively, they're nothing more than range toys. The baddest of baddest dudes in Delta and DEVGRU and just other tier 1 units have basically 100% dropped the subgun platform and switched to almost exclusively a M4 variant. Almost exclusively in 5.56, sometimes 300 black. And to be honest with you, I don't see that changing. I don't foresee anyone saying, hey, I know these 5.56 guns, they're good, they're great, they're accurate, 300, 400 yards, stuff like that. They're great for kicking doors. We should go limit our range and go back to 9mm subguns. I just don't see it. In law enforcement as well. What used to be like the premier weapon of SWAT in just direct action police department forces have basically dropped these guns in favor of the M4 platform. Even handguns, which leaves subguns basically in the hands of, well, I don't know, a handful of operators that exclusively do CQB, most of which, again, are using the M4 platform. And nerds like myself playing water heaters at the local city dump. It's sad. It hurts my heart, but I get it. I understand. Realistically, you have to ask yourself, what am I getting out of this pistol caliber cartridge that can't be done with 300 black or 5.56 M4? The answer is, well, really nothing. It's not really any lighter. Most are absolutely not more ergonomic. Most aren't even proven by decades of war fighters, with the exclusion of the MP5. And even then, it's like 1/100th of the combat the M4 has seen. Simply put, you have a far less concealable handgun that happens to go like, that's cool and everything, but operators aren't doing CQB in full auto. They're almost exclusively using semi-auto. So why wouldn't I just run a handgun? Why wouldn't I sacrifice a touch of range by going to a shorter barrel to a more concealable weapon that's realistically almost exclusively going to be used within 20 meters? And well, that's what you're seeing today. The death of the submachine gun. It's sad, but like all great things, I suppose they have to come to an end. So let's talk about a few of the pros and cons that come with some of these submachine guns. Let's start with the pros. So one, obviously, they're a ton of fun. And two, you do get a little more range because you typically have a barrel that's longer than 3.5, 4.5 inches. That's going to get you more muzzle velocity, which is going to get you more range. But it's not getting you enough range to effectively turn it into any sort of carbine, any sort of rifle. Absolutely not. Again, they're not changing anything that was capable in World War II other than some good cartridge and powder technology, but you're talking the difference between maybe 80 to 100 meters to going to 150 meters. That's kind of a liability. This gun is essentially a liability to dudes who are modern warfighters. And when I say modern warfighters, well, even as close as World War II, that gun was not necessarily outclassed, but it wasn't effective. It was effective in CQB, but as a large-scale fielded weapon, I think you were better off with something like a carbine or an M1 Garand. So we have a pro, but we also have a con against that. Another pro is going to be that, yes, they are bullet hoses. Typically, you have a good rate of fire, but not always. Sometimes you can add mass to the bolt in the bolt carrier group to help slow those things down. Look at the grease gun. I mean, goodness, I think we were still using those all the way up into the 90s in tank crews and things like that. That thing had a very, very slow fire rate, about half of what the M1 Thompson is. So it's very controllable and it's 45. But ultimately, these were guns that were just like, okay, they're super small, they'll fit in a tank, and we already own them. We don't have to procure more of these firearms. And let's be real, these dudes in these tanks, they're not typically getting out of them because they're fortresses. I mean, they are rolling massive fortresses that are not impenetrable, but unless we got in some massive conflict, yeah, they're kind of not really that impenetrable. So it's great that we had them and used them in that, but that could have been done with an M4. It's just that we didn't want to spend the money on those things. So when you talk about the difference between some of these pistol calibers and rifle calibers, let's just compare 5.56, for instance. So a 10.3, absolutely positively, you can get hits at 500 meters with this firearm. Absolutely positively. I've seen dudes go out to 800 meters with a 10.5-inch gun. 5.56, that is. That's impressive. Like, hits on target, you got to be pretty good, but you can absolutely do it. 400? Yeah. 300? Yes, absolutely. All day, boring regularity. You're not doing that with a pistol caliber carbine. Can it be done? Absolutely. But That's really tough and really difficult. Not to mention, you have a ballistic coefficient of maybe with pistol calibers. So these 5.56 bullets are cutting and deflecting wind in just all sort of weather conditions, tenfold greater than a 45 and a 9mm. Not to mention, still delivering good energy on target. So they're not as effective at long range. Even, well, you wouldn't even call that long range, 300 meters. They're just simply not hitting the target. Sure, I'm sure you can walk some of them in, but first round hits at 300 meters with a 5.56, 10.5 inch, absolutely positively. If you can't do that, get better. If you can do that with a 9mm PCC, you're doing pretty well. Like, good job, bro. Good job. So, like, it's very difficult to justify continuing on using these things. So it's exclusively been used by these super high speed tier 1 kind of guys, and exclusively within like 0 to 10 meters. We're talking room clearing here. And most of these dudes, they're still using the M4. I think this is where 300 Black has come in. So you have a super quiet cartridge. It's 220 grain typically. Sometimes they're 210. They'll even use like 110s if you want to get a little bit more range on it, which I do suggest actually, because then that gets you a carbine that is very small. It's quiet, but you can get some very good effective hits, 300, 400 meters with one of these short 110 grain projectiles. So absolutely, like 8 days a week, it doesn't make much sense to field these things anymore. And I get it why they have just disappeared from the battlefield altogether. They just kind of suck. They just have been outclassed by cartridge technology and small arms technology. Hurts my heart. It does. I'm still going to shoot my MP5. I'm still going to shoot my Uzi. Like, they're a ton of fun. Tons of fun to go dump with a Thompson, but it's sad. It's sad. Hurts the heart, man. Hurts the heart. I think the sub gun is officially dead. And unless you want it as a range toy, I don't think it's a very good choice. So, JDs and Lettleman, we have a wrap on the life and death of the submachine gun. As always, guys, be sure to subscribe and share and turn on those notifications to keep in touch for the next video. Say it with me. Run your gun, not your mouth. We'll catch you next time.